How's it going? And welcome to episode 263 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as always by Kevin Hastings. Thank you all for listening and watching. We've got a great show lined up for you again as my camera freezes on me once again. But Kevin, hopefully you can still hear me and I'll get that sorted out as we continue. But happy to be here. And of course, for all those watching us on YouTube, it happened to freeze on like a quite an awkward face that I'm making. So that's fun for me. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I am enjoying watching you appears you're about to kiss your microphone there. Yeah.
That's
That's nice. But yeah, so much going on, Adam. I say this all the time because anytime there's being baseball played, it's one of my favorite times of the year. But with the trade deadline approaching,
oh man.
there are a lot of guys coming back from injury, either starting rehabs this week or this weekend, or maybe coming back to their teams this weekend.
Mhm.
We have a lot of extra things to try to pay attention to before we get our FAAB bids in tomorrow evening.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. August 3rd, of course, is the MLB trade deadline. My home league has the rule where our trade deadline is always the Sunday after. So with the MLB trade line being on Monday, we've got a good almost a full week of
Mhm.
things to actually look into the aftermath to see what we want to do as a league and as individual teams looking for our playoffs. But obviously be knowledgeable of your own league rules and regulations as far as when you can trade, when you can't trade, when your deadline is. Just because the trade deadline in Major League Baseball is August 3rd does not mean your trade deadline hasn't already passed.
Right.
In some weird scenario, you should probably look into that rule and have it pushed back a little bit later, but that's okay. Yeah, obviously know what those regulations are and what those assets are that you can trade. We had a rule placed in that league a long time ago to stop non league related assets from being traded, so you couldn't basically do cash considerations on the side for for
Mhm.
players. If it wasn't fantasy baseball related, you could not trade it. Yeah, so you couldn't buy someone dinner just to get a closer at the deadline. So hopefully you have those rules in place as well. But yeah, I'm sure we'll litter a lot of our insight into the news that we're about to talk about and our fab considerations for this week and of course next week. But this is kind of like that last weekend that you have to kind of pay speculation pricing on fab. As next Sunday, as we get the Sunday after is right before the deadline. A lot of the big trades will have already happened. So you're already going to know, you're going to have a guaranteed knowledge of what those roles are, what new teams players are on and stuff like that. This is that weekend where you can still get away with some speculation pricing on Fab. So we'll talk a little bit about that throughout the show as well. All right. Well, let's that this is fun. The note that you put on here too about the trade line, just because of the timing, Kevin. It's nice that the deadline for you is noon in
Yes.
Hawaii as opposed to 6 p.m. Eastern time. So that's just fun. I'm sure you'll be watching the annual stream with Nick Pollock and Paul Spohr as well on Monday. Well, for you, Monday
Yeah,
morning.
I'll be setting an alarm clock to get up for that.
Exactly. That's a good way to spend your Monday morning. That's if you have the
Exactly.
ability to do so. And then we got just 8 Fab Sundays after that. Or from now on, from here on out, there's only 8 more times that you have time to spend money. So if you have been hoarding it, stop. Let's start off with the most recent news that I noticed from this evening's games. We're recording this a little later than we normally do on Saturday, so we've got some more information to talk about. Cody Bellinger left Saturday's game with an apparent injury as he sustained it, hitting a double in the eighth inning, sliding into second base, and he was removed from the game from there. I am not seeing an update from this, but if Bellinger were to miss any time, what kind of impact or what kind of opportunity would anybody else on the Yankees be able to provide you?
Well, it's very interesting because Cody Bellinger has been in left field every game except one of July. He played that day. He did give Paul Goldschmidt a spell that day and played first base. He's played left field every day for this entire month. So is Jason Dominguez, all but one, and many more going back prior to that in right field. They already have uh, guys that we don't really want playing defense in the outfield out there every single day. If this is more than a minimum IL stay, if there's anything at all timing here, this is going to affect the trade deadline, in my opinion. We're not going to see Max Schumann out there on an everyday basis until we get Bellinger back.
Yeah, that's
Until then, it's probably Max Schumann though.
yeah, you got to assume at this point, unless I mean, who are they at a point where they could call back up anybody from the minors to kind of fill that gap? But I don't know that he's going to miss an extended period of time. Again, I haven't seen any kind of updates
Right.
here.
Yeah, this
Um,
is brand new. Left the game here on Saturday, but
mhm.
yeah, I would say if it's a day or two, Max Schumann will just fill the spot. But if this is going to be have any time to it, I think it affects our next 10 days leading up to the trade deadline.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of impact that makes on the Yankees' plans for the deadline as well. But Spencer Jones was just called sent back down after just 2 days on the roster. He could be an option for filling in if there were to be something they just need to fill for a minimum stint because of an injury. He would be eligible to come back up as well. All right. Well, on the opposite end of this, we're speculating on one team possibly losing somebody. Now we get to speculate on another team all but guaranteed to have some players return from the IL. And we're gonna this is gonna be a common theme throughout the episode, as you said, Kevin. There's a couple of players that are either going on rehabs or expected to be finishing up their rehabs this coming week. And this first one is on the for the Dodgers. They expect to get Kike Hernandez and Edwin Diaz back on I think it was Tuesday and Wednesday is what Dave Roberts said his expectation for them respectively. What you know, Diaz obviously just slots right back into the closer position for the Dodgers, but what kind of role do you expect Hernandez to have, and what kind of shift in their lineup or roster for playing time will he impact?
Yeah, I think we see him all over the field as we have in the past. It's kind of interesting for a team that we think of as playing the matchups and guys in and out of the lineup all of the time due to injuries and such. The Dodgers have had a really stable lineup versus righties and lefties, just a group of about 10, maybe 11 guys filling that nine hitter lineup on a daily basis versus righties and lefties. So I think guys are going to get some well-deserved breaks.
Hmm.
We may even see Mookie Betts get a day off at shortstop. We'll definitely see Tommy Edman probably missing a day at second base. Kyle Tucker in right and Teoscar Hernandez in left. I think all these guys are going to get a break that they haven't been able to get. They've been getting about 1 day off every 2 to 3 weeks, and some of these guys aren't young anymore.
Hmm.
So I really think that's what we're going to see, and maybe enough of that Hernandez is gets enough plate appearances to be viable, at least in deep leagues.
Yeah, I mean we have no idea just because he's only played 2 games all season.
Yeah.
He was
The
hurt
the
to
the
start.
the the memory I have of Hernandez is his celebration at the World Series. That's the last time I remember seeing him, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that you can't scrub away. But I think that the obvious playing time is going to be, Muncie's still Max Muncie is still in a pretty strong platoon. Tommy Edmonds seems to be the one that fills in at third base for Muncie when he comes off. I would assume Hernandez ends up being that third base plug against lefties, plays that position pretty much every time they face a southpaw, and then kind of like you said, rotates around. But that gives Edman his time off. That continues to give Muncy his time off, and then to be able to then move around and give Betts a day off every other week or every week, and then slop into the corner spots in the outfield as well if necessary. Makes a whole lot of sense.
Dodgers with a weird week coming up as well. First half of the week in NFBC and other formats with where we can change our hitters on Friday.
Mhm.
Dodgers are facing three right-handed pitchers the first half of the week and three left-handed pitchers
Over
the
the week.
weekend.
Oof. All right. Well, if you do roster Max Muncy, make sure you get a backup third baseman or corner infielder.
Exactly.
All right. So the other another one that's well, we know it's going to be returned because he's already been announced. He's starting. Connor Prelip is starting for Minnesota tomorrow, as we're recording this on Saturday. So by the time you're listening to this, if you have Connor Prelip on your IL and you can move him into your starting spot in your daily leagues, consider doing that. But he will re-enter the Twins rotation moving forward, assuming his blister does not come back. Knock on wood. So with Prelip coming back into the fold for the Minnesota rotation, who does he kick out? Does it matter? And does this impact what Minnesota might be doing leading up to the trade deadline, in your opinion?
Well, no, I think they're going back to five-man rotation. I kind of agree with both the Fangraphs and RotoWire projected starters over Bradley, Joe Ryan, Zebby Matthews, Connor Prelip. Now the starting five. That looks doable for me. And for Prelip, after we see him on Sunday, his start next week will come on Saturday at Seattle, with a pretty nice ballpark to land in for a start coming back. So, in the few places where he is still available, I do expect him to be snatched up for that start at Seattle this week.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean with Prelip obviously being where he is in his career and where Minnesota is, he's obviously not the one I'm talking about for like kind of plans for the trade deadline. But curious to see if there's anybody else that can just be tossed aside by the Twins to give even more clarity into the rest of the rotation moving forward for the rest of the season. Um, Honestly, I have a bad sense of where Minnesota is in the AL mix, and they're right. They're in the hunt for the AL Central, and if I'm not mistaken, that should put them in at least striking distance. Yeah, they're the first team out of the American League wild card, so it's not as though I can never.
Tied with that Seattle team they'll be playing next weekend, only 2 games out. Yeah. So,
I just can't see the
still,
Twins being somebody that's going to be a buyer no matter where they are in the standings.
yeah, that's tough to believe, of
Yeah,
course. But yeah, they got a chance here. There's really only um 3 teams obviously out of it in the American League. The Angels, the Athletics, and my Royals. I would say because of the division they're in that Toronto is pretty close, but at only 5.5 back with a third of the season to play. I can't say that yet.
sure. 5.5 back, but as you said a couple weeks ago,
They got to
five and a
jump
half
everybody.
back with one, two, three, four,
But
five, 6 teams to jump over.
all you got to do is run off 16 straight like your Red Sox, right?
Yeah,
That's all
who
it
would have?
takes.
It's
That's
it's
all it
just that
takes.
easy. It's just that
Yeah.
easy. Oh man, but then Toronto goes and crushes them 6-0 today, and crushing my Sonny Gray exposure across many leagues.
Yeah, that's
Um,
this is not a good two-step week for
for many.
Sonny Gray or Joe Ryan, either one.
Well, Joe, yeah. Well, Gray. Oh, for this week, Ryan got pushed to the Monday start with the prelip being announced for Sunday, so he'll get this two-step for next week. Sonny Gray went today
Ah,
and got knocked around. Because also something I didn't put on here is I guess I should throw it out there is right here. Suarez is back for the Red Sox. Also, it's scheduled to start on Sunday, so that pushed Peyton Tolley to the Monday start. So Tolley will be getting the 2 start for the Red Sox next week as well.
yep,
All right, we talked about a couple players coming back, or they are back. Now we got to go the other. We got to swing the other way, Kevin. Of course, to Texas. Now they lose Josh Jung to the IL, and they replace him with a different Josh Smith, who they call back up to replace him on the roster. Um, is this simply a 1-for-1, Josh for Josh? We've seen Josh Smith come in and kind of be that man that kind of fills in pretty much anywhere that Texas needs to, especially last year. This year's been a little bit more of an up and down situation, but can he at least take all of Young's playing time, which wasn't, an everyday occurrence, but, is this something that we could see Smith being used in such a way where he actually becomes useful?
yeah, I think so, and I think he'll get a little more regular playing time than he has seen so far this season, as you said, and that may get him back in the groove because he's never been a superstar, right?
Mhm.
But double digit home runs when he gets over 500 plate appearances, double digit stolen bases, 60 to 70 runs, 60 to 70 RBI with a 250-ish batting average. He's always been there for us when we needed him. That and like he is for the Texas Rangers, hasn't been really called upon that much by the Rangers yet this year. So hopefully it comes through for our teams as well, and he kind of gets in a groove with this regular playing time. His walk rates and strikeout rates are where they have been throughout his career. So I think we might get a bit of a groove going, and rest of season projections kind of agree with that. More of a mid 240s batting average projection. And if we increase the plate appearances on those projections, then yeah, a handful of home runs, handful of stolen bases still to come. I think Josh Smith will do what we've seen in past seasons, not what we've seen so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him filling in the leadoff spot last year, and right
Yep.
before he got sent back down a couple weeks ago, he was in the 2 spot for 3 out of his 4 starts as well. So
He gave
he
us
is
some really
somebody.
good streaks when both Seager and Young
Mhm.
were out
Sure.
over the past couple of years. Yeah.
Yep. Ezekiel Duran, our boy, has been filling in for the last couple days at third base, while the Rangers figure out when Young what they were going to do with him. But with the call up, Smith went right into the third base spot and moved Duran back over to shortstop. So I would expect to see that same flow moving forward as well. All right. So where are we here? Okay, we're gonna stay in the state of Texas. We'll move over to Houston, who lose their starter Spencer Arrighetti to the IL with right foot nerve irritation. That just sounds terrible. Um, and then they bring up Brian King to replace him on the roster. What does the loss of Arrighetti kind of do for the Astros, at least in the short term?
It appears that we are going to see Ethan Pecco this week. Brian King coming up with with Arrighetti not no longer needing that roster spot
Mhm.
to fortify the bullpen until they need another starter, and then it appears we'll see Pecco. Um, I he won't be available to us yet this week in NFBC formats, and I really want to see a start at the major league level. This will be his major league debut, and I'm trying to keep an open mind. But what looking at his numbers, I'm not really interested. But there's just enough there, just enough strikeouts there that maybe if we see some nice command, which is my worry with him in this start this coming week, that I might have interest next Sunday.
Yeah, Pego not currently on the 40-man roster. That does expire for him this coming off season, so might as well just throw him on there. Wondering who they end up sending down or DFAing in order to make room for him, but it probably doesn't matter. And I mean, they did obviously just get back um, Ronnie Blanco, who, struck out, what was it, 7 or 8 on his debut, gave a bunch of runs, but not really on a whole lot of hits. So, I mean, they're already making replacements or additions into the rotation. What's one more, right? So we'll see how Pecco does when he finally does get that call as expected.
He is the fourth ranked prospect in their
Mhm.
organization, so there's some pedigree there. Uh, Scouting his stat page, I'm not really impressed. That's why I want to see him play this week,
Sure.
pitch this week.
Yep. Well, he'll just be another interesting name to think about next week when we have,
Exactly.
as we are leading up to the trade deadline. In addition to everything else. Um, all right, so we have a lot more news than I expected, and it has really nothing to do with the trade deadline. In order to catch myself up and catch my breath, first we're going to take a quick break. All right, Kevin. Earlier in the week, Juan Soto left the game, or he was injured with a calf strain, and the Mets officially did throw him on the IL. Early estimates have him missing at least between 4 to 6 weeks. And of course, with the Mets season where they're at, I would expect it to be closer to the 6 than the 4 in that estimation. No reason to kind of push him back except to sell tickets in September to games. So with that being said, in what scenario are you dropping Juan Soto?
4 to 6 weeks with 9 weeks to go in the season. Um, I really need the spot. He's my last drop if I really, really need. I don't think I could come up. I don't think any of my teams are in a position, and I only have Soto in a couple of spots, but
Mhm.
I don't think they're in a position where I can let him go. Um, as far as the Mets are concerned, this is going to open up the DH spot because he's been mostly playing DH for the past week or so. So I think we'll see more Jorge Polanco. That's been back for a couple of weeks now. Um, Maybe Brett Beatty, but his performance hasn't really earned him that. Luis Roberts played 4 of the 5 games since he's been back. He probably is more of a everyday guy as long as he's feeling good. Carson Bench had a day off early this week. He probably doesn't get another one for a while. I think that's what we're going to see, more Polanco and a couple others on rest days in that DH spot.
Yeah, they brought back Eric Wagaman as the corresponding move, I believe, who had just been sent down when Luis Robert Jr. came off the IL. So he wasn't exactly, playing every day anyway. So this
Yeah, and
obviously not a one for one.
I think there will be days. It was rare that Wagaman and Jared Young would be in the lineup on the same day,
Mhm.
but that could be the case now from time to time with Soto out of there versus righties. We would see both Jared Young and Wagaman in the lineup possibly, but Wagaman's usually going to play against lefties, and in
Mm.
fact, that's all he's played against
Yep.
for most of this year. He didn't. I don't think he has started versus a righty. So yeah, he's back in there of a platooning with Jared Young because somebody's going to have to fill that DH spot. So they need Wagaman back versus lefties.
Yep. I see just by scanning through, I see one start against the righty out of his, about maybe a dozen starts since being
Yeah,
called up in late June or late May, excuse me. So don't expect that to change too often or at all. Um,
right.
go down to Tampa Bay. They got back a pitcher. This time it's Steven Matz. He returns from the IL to make room. Chris Roycroft was optioned down. What role can Matz have for the AL East leading Tampa Bay Rays?
I think he's going to be back in the bullpen. The race they just always do this. As you said, AL East leading Bay Rays with all the good baseball we're seeing played up in that part of the country. But what now that they're pretty set with Griffin Jacks, Ian Seymour, Shane McClanahan, Nick Martinez, Drew Rasmussen. So I think Matz is probably gives them a little bit of depth if any of those guys need a break or a short injury stint, and can give them innings out of the bullpen.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly how I expected to you and that's how they had already moved him out of the rotation before the injury anyway, so it's
Right.
not as though, you get him back and you have to make that consideration. They're not in any different of a spot as far as their rotation goes, to consider that at the moment. Now
They've played with, Seymour's, innings a little bit, so at some point, we might see Matz get a spot start, and they skip him to kinda keep his innings down. I think they'll want him available in the postseason, Ian Seymour, I believe.
sure. Yeah, I wonder if it's more instead of skipping a whole start, it's giving them a piggyback situation where
Yep,
you pull them after 3 or 4 and let Mats go to the other 3 or 4 to get a full start out of a pair.
and if
Uh,
we know that's gonna happen, I would love Matz for my ratios guy for that week, right?
I mean, if
It
you know Mats is only going to
it
be in there for 3 or 4 innings and qualify for the win, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yep.
Uh, just more of a, housekeeping. If you roster Addison Barger in a single season league, go ahead and drop him. He will miss the remainder of the season and probably a chunk of next season as well, as he goes under the knife to for elbow surgery. Not sure if he's getting the full Tommy John or some other brace procedure or any other kind of procedure, but either way, elbow surgery should keep him out for maybe up to 12 months, if not maybe 9 to 12 months on the low end. So, yeah, Addison Barger can uh, be left off your 2026 plans for the remainder of the season. What does his absence, though, in Toronto mean for anybody else, Kevin?
Not much. We haven't seen him. I held on to him way longer than I should have in the leagues I drafted because this is one of those situations where we thought we were going to get him back fairly early, and then there's a little bit of a delay. There's a setback, but he's should be okay. And now here we are, 2/3 of the way through the season, nearly, and we're finally getting the news that he's not coming back. So, um,
Sure.
yeah, it doesn't affect anything with Toronto's lineup much. We haven't seen him.
Yeah, fair enough. But if you were holding on to him as long as this, you can cleanly cut bait. Um,
Yeah, I don't have him in any redraft leagues this long. Like I said, I held him way longer than I should have. But even in a keeper league that I have him in right now, I'm not sure what to do.
yeah. Yeah, well, we'll see, especially if you are in a win now situation and you don't have a
Right.
whole lot of IL spots. That's a whole nother consideration. Um, just got word that, or I just read that Cody Bellinger had a hamstring injury after leaving that game earlier tonight. No word on the severity of it, but hamstrings still don't love that. Um,
That's usually at least a minimum stint.
Yeah, I figured
Yep.
because it's a muscle injury, not just like a bone bruise or something, oh, I
Mhm.
hit my knee the wrong way or something like that, that it probably will instill an actual stint. We'll find out on Sunday, hopefully. Um,
Yeah, hopefully.
Matt McClain is headed on a rehab assignment and should rejoin. I would expect that the rehab won't take the full allotment of time. What when he returns to Cincinnati, what kind of expect for playing time and shifting of the rest of the roster would you expect?
Well, he was playing, about 2/3 of the
Mhm.
games. He had started to lose time, especially against righties, right prior to the injury. And we've seen Edwin Arroyo in there. We've seen Cabrian Hayes come back at third base, which is taken up some of the plate appearances on the infield. But my take with McClain is I just hope that it doesn't mean they give Eugenio Suarez, another day off here and there. They don't sit, you know, uh, Brian Hayes is fine. Nobody uses him in fantasy for offense anyway. So I guess mostly it's going to be Arroyo, which isn't a big fantasy asset either. So this is really a non-story for me. Matt McClain has not performed to a level where we want him in our lineups, and I really don't think he's going to take playing time away from anybody we really care too much about either. So I thought there was going to be more here, but yeah, with his performance and already dwindling playing time prior to the injury, I don't have any interest on McClain coming back.
Thoughts on like all right, because Cincinnati is one of those few teams, and you mentioned in the American League, there's only three teams that are absolutely out of it. The National League's not much different. There's only four teams absolutely out of it, and I would say even three that are absolutely. And Cincinnati is that fourth team, right? They're six
Mhm.
games back from their last wild card spot, with the same amount of teams that they would have to jump over as Toronto, as you talked about in the American League. Um, Making them a somewhat obvious seller. Eugenio Suarez being one of those obvious pieces that a contender would like to, if they're looking for bats and not pitching, this could be a player that they target, which would then, all of these trades combined with, or the possibility of trades combined with the replacement of injured players like McClain, does this is there an opportunity for McClain to work his way back into everyday playing time just because Cincinnati has a possibility of making room through trades?
Yeah, that would be a possibility. Unfortunately, uh, it would still be at the bottom of the lineup as he's been
Hmm.
uh, in his plate appearances so far this season. At least at the top half of the lineup until you get down to Suarez, right? De La Cruz, Sal Stewart, JJ Leday probably not going anywhere.
Sure.
So he's not going to move up all the way back to the top of the lineup where we have seen him some even this season. And that is when I had some appeal, and it just didn't work out at that time. I mean, he's hitting like 190 on the season. That I'm not. I don't even have his page up, but I was really looking at him earlier today, Adam, when we got this news that he was starting his rehab assignment this weekend. 8 home runs, 11 stolen bases with the limited playing time he's had this season. That's nice. I mean,
Hmm.
if he was playing full time, he's on a 2020 pace for the season. But with the 190 batting average, I just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, if anything else, as you started listing off the other players in Cincinnati that are probably not going anywhere, you realize if Suarez were to be the one that moves, because he's the kind of obvious low hanging fruit here on this, on at least on the hitting side for Cincinnati, there are other players that could end up taking his playing time. Between
Brian
the
Hayes,
Brian
probably
Hayes, yeah,
back to everyday third baseman, right?
right,
He's not hitting much worse than McClain right now. That's how bad it is for McClain.
exactly. That was the name that definitely popped out.
Yeah.
Um, All right. Well, again, more players coming back. We'll go over to Milwaukee now. Stay in the NL Central. They got back David Hamilton earlier in the week. They DFA Braden Shoemake to make room for him. We talked about the fact that Hamilton had been out last week when we mentioned that Joey Ortiz had been filling in admirably every single day. With Hamilton back, does that impact Ortiz or anybody else?
Oh, it's so I have David Hamilton listed down below when we start going by category as a speed play for this week. He was dropped in a whole lot of places. He's only 45% rostered in the main event and only 11% rostered in 12-team online championships. The problem is the playing time is here's what I see. With Hamilton out, both Cooper Pratt and Jory Ortiz were playing nearly every day. David Hamilton's been back for 2 games. He has been the starting third baseman for each of those
Mhm.
2 games. Cooper Pratt sat one, Joey Ortiz sat the other. They both started one of those 2 games at shortstop. This could really become, all 3 of these guys playing 2 out of every 3 games. Um, we need to watch this on Sunday. If David Hamilton starts on Sunday, I'm definitely want him in my lineups this week.
Mhm.
That's a good indication. If he's out Sunday, I think the worst case scenario is he's only playing 2/3 of games, but depending on your league and what you're looking for and your situation, that may not be enough playing time. So I
Sure.
am slightly concerned with the playing time, but I am ecstatic he's back. And in deep leagues, I think in 15 teamers, he's stealing enough bases with the limited playing time. He'll be fine.
Sure.
But in, I guess my big thing is in 12s. Will he be viable in 12s? And that depends on what we see between him, Ortiz, and Pratt.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, since Pratt got called up in mid-June, and up until Hamilton's actual IL stint, that's exactly the playing time that we saw from those 3 guys. Pratt played a little bit more than the rest of them, missing, playing 5 games, being off, playing 4 games, being off. Everybody else was like 2 games on, 1 game off, 3 games
Yeah.
on, 1 game off.
I expect I expect to see Pratt at shortstop, Ortiz at third base, and Hamilton on the bench on Sunday
And then that pattern will
because that's
continue to
their
repeat.
2 out of 3 sequence right off the bat, off and rolling as
Yep.
the first 3 games he's back.
All right, catching situation in Baltimore just got a little bit worse. They already had Adley Rutschman on the IL. He's announced that he is throwing again, but not catching, while he works his way back. But now they also lose Samuel Basallo with right shoulder inflammation. And instead of bringing up a listed catcher, they bring up outfield prospect Jonathan Rodriguez to replace Basallo on the roster. So with both Adley and Basallo out in Baltimore, what are the Orioles doing behind the plate?
Yeah, we've had about a close to a week of Chadwick Trump getting every start versus right-handed starting pitching, and one of the 3 versus lefties, Sam Huff, got the other 2 starts versus lefties. Baltimore does have a pretty split up week, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. Let's see here. Why can't I find it? Yes, they're facing 2 lefties this week. So, and they're kind of split up. One in the first half, one in the second half. So I think we're going to see 4 starts out of Trump and 2 out of Sam Huff this week.
Mhm. Yeah, and to clarify what I said earlier, after 2 days of being on the roster, Jonathan Rodriguez was DFA'd by the Orioles as well. So he's not even the one replacing Basallo at this point. He got one start at DH, and then they said no, thank you. Which I'm sure he'll find another gig. Um, the Athletics, they lose a pitcher, JT Ginn to the IL with a blister, and Mason Barnett was recalled to replace him on the roster. Any implications there as far as considerations? I know we consider athletic pitchers as much as we consider Colorado pitchers at this point, but any
Even
impact?
less,
Yeah,
and, with
sure.
the week like this coming up, they're at home all week. Barnett probably facing those red hot Red Sox as well. He was a follower here on Saturday, but we do believe he is listed, at least projected to be the starter on Thursday. So, yeah, I think he's taking the rotation spot, but, yeah, 0 interest.
You're fair enough.
0 interest in West Sacramento.
Yeah. Uh, Cleveland got back another key part of their fight for the AL Central, and that's of course Jose Ramirez. They optioned Khalil Watson to replace him on the roster. Obviously, you throw Ramirez into your lineup wherever possible, but Watson was filling in the outfield, and so who is Ramirez going to be displacing of course, being put in at third base or DH every single day for the Guardians.
Daniel Schneemann also got sent down. So that's
Okay.
the two guys got sent down. We got Angel Martinez back, and we got Jose Ramirez back. Schneemann and Watson gone. I I think we'll see Martinez in the lineup most days, leading off versus lefties, and they have some lefties this week, so that's nice. Ramirez got his third game back off. That's probably easing him in. I think we'll see
Hmm.
maybe he gets a day off later this coming week, and then it'll be a couple weeks before we see another one. So I think his off days will get fewer and further between. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Watson was getting a lot of starts in the outfield, and he was actually sent down 2 games prior to Schneemann because Schneemann could play third base, and now with Ramirez back in there every day, he's gone as well. So, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward here. The one I think is going to lose some playing time in spite of this because Watson and Schneemann, neither one played every single day. Uh, Gabriel Arias, he was about halftime over the last week or two. He could run off a string of, 3 weeks ago, he played 6 straight, 7 straight, but he may be down to 1 to 2 starts a week now.
Um, of course, this is the beauty of doing a recording on Saturday evenings, Kevin, instead of Fridays, is that we get all the news as it comes in from the
Yep.
Saturday evening games. I'll throw it out here now. We'll see if we get any new information by the time we're done with the news section. But Wyatt Langford, just like Cody Bellinger, also left his game on Saturday. He's getting X-rays. Results are not available at least from what I can tell. But we are, we'll see something before the day is done or before we're done recording. But by the time you're listening to this on Sunday, hopefully you can find more information on that. If Wyatt Langford were to, and I'm throwing this at you last second, but like, if Wyatt Langford were to miss time again for the Rangers, what kind of impact do you think his absence will have?
Alejandro Osuna, just like we saw before.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we know what happens when
Right.
Wyatt Langford is out because he's out so often. And he was performing well. I really thought this was the time, Adam. Not that he was going to stay healthy forever, but he was healthy and performing the
Producing.
way we got glimpses of 2 seasons ago and really thought this was going to be a superstar in this league. I was getting that feeling again. I'm not going to let myself get that feeling anymore.
Yeah. Well, even more news coming in like at the second. X-rays quote looked good, but he expects more testing to come and is hoping to still play on Sunday. So hopefully this is a big old nothing burger,
I hope so.
Kevin.
Yeah, that's been nice
Yeah.
seeing him back this past couple weeks.
Oh, and
But
performing
yeah,
the way
if
he
he
has
does
been.
miss time, we know it's Osuna in his spot.
Mhm. All right, let's go back into the pitching side of things. Atlanta they got back Martin Perez earlier in the week. They optioned JR Ritchie to make room. Atlanta being one of those teams that I think a lot of us expect to make a move on the pitching side toward the deadline. Does this matter so much to you at all?
Uh, Not really at the moment. Martin Perez kinda on the bubble for
Mhm.
me this week. I don't mind a lefty going into New York to face the Mets, but something we would not have thought we would have said earlier this season. I'm a little scared of the Washington start. So, but yeah, this may be the last week that we see Martin Perez out there, at least on a regular basis. He could always fill in as a depth spot start here and there. Um, might be Bryce Elder too, though. You
Sure.
don't know. But yeah, I like Martinez back for this week. But yes, I do expect Atlanta to add somebody to this rotation
Chris
by
Sale can't do
August
it all.
3rd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll do what he can, and he'll do it admirably, but he
Yep.
can't do it all for everybody. Um, your Royals here, they made a trade already. They're not waiting until the trade deadline. They bring in Nate Pearson they trade away prospect or pitching prospect Max Martin to Houston to make room for him. And kind of the bigger news here, the Royals are without Bobby Witt Jr. for a little bit with back tightness. He kind of fought that for a little bit, and then finally, no, no, let's just throw him on the IL. How long are you expecting Witt to be out with that, with the back tightness, and who's filling in for your Royals at short?
Yeah, they'll take their time. So I expect it to be at least a few weeks, but they did sign or recalled after they had signed several weeks ago Andrew Velasquez. Not typically somebody that we can use a whole lot in fantasy. There have been periods where I remember talking about him on our show.
Hmm.
It's been 3 or 4 years ago, probably back in 2022 when he got those 349 plate appearances. And yes, I do remember this. Yeah, 9 home runs and 300 plate appearances is nice. 17 stolen bases are awesome,
Sure.
but he's got a 196, a 173, and a 143 batting average the last 3 seasons he's played in Major League Baseball. And until these 7 plate appearances for the Royals, that hadn't been since 2023. So, not a big threat here. If he's getting on base, he could steal some bases. Versus lefties, he probably doesn't play. We probably see Nick Lofton at shortstop. They'll move some guys around. Tolbert can play shortstop. But Velasquez is going to get a majority of Bobby Witt's playing time. As for the pitching, Nate Pearson, the Royals bullpen has been decimated by performance
Sure.
and injuries, and they'll take any live body right now in that bullpen. They need anybody that can give them innings.
Sure.
So I really think the Royals are now in the mode of let's make it to the end of the season without losing anybody else, without furthering any of these injuries. Yeah, no, we're not going to shut Bobby Witt Jr. down, but we're going to take it easy and we're going to make sure these guys go into the offseason healthy so they can get their offseason work in. I think that's where the Royals are at now.
I had to make a decision in one league where I've been stashing Connor Griffin for a while on my IL. I had filled up my IL spots. Bobby Witt goes on the IL. I dropped Connor Griffin, hoping that the Royals will bring back Bobby Witt first. But now I'm wondering, like, I mean, Griffin is not slated to come back probably until early September, but the Pirates are still in this, right? The Pirates are the first or second team out of the NL wildcard spot. By the time Griffin comes back, there's more guarantee that they'll push him or at least push him enough to help them get into that wildcard spot, as opposed to the Royals and Mets and teams like that are going to slow play their stars, especially ones that are under contract for a long time, going
Mm.
forward. I wonder if I made the right choice. I mean, I can still fix it if I needed to, but
It's
I do wonder if how much the Royals will actually slow play. Not only
that's a
Wit,
really close call for me. I think I could be convinced either way was right.
Michael Garcia still being slow played
Yep,
in a way. I wonder how
absolutely.
much
All
they
right, we're going to
they
see a lot.
continue
We're
to do
going to see some Josh Rojas and Nick Lofton for the Royals.
that. All right, okay. That can be fun.
Yeah,
Last thing here I've got on the list, back to pitching Detroit, who, we're all on Scuba watch to see when they end up going there, but they've got to fill another rotation spot first in Jack Flaherty as he hits the IL with the right flexor inflammation. They did recall Ty Madden to take his place on the roster. Is this a one for one, or what do I mean, are in what scenario are you dropping Flaherty, which I assume is if you were kind of on the fence with Flaherty just because of name recognition, this probably pushes you over, especially in a league where you don't have IL spots. But like, yeah, your whole take on the Tiger situation.
yeah. I think this is the last straw for those that were still hanging on to Flaherty, and I I am a I am not a fan of Flaherty. I 100% admit that at times he can be a phenomenal pitcher and in streaks, very, very good for our fantasy teams at times. I just haven't bought into him this season, and it's been an up and down thing. He's been available at times, even for a two step, and I just haven't made that move. And sometimes I've been right, other times I wish I'd have had him rostered. But I think, yeah, it just means we're going to see Montero and Milton in Detroit, along with Skubal, Mize, Valdez. Of course, I know it. I know you can't wait to say, Adam, that Skubal may not be on this roster in a week and a half. And then what would that do? Um, I am of the opinion, yeah, if I was taking the Tigers or the field, I would take the field for Skubal. But if I have to pick a team he's pitching for in 2 weeks, it's the Tigers.
Man, it's tough, man. You got it's just that conundrum
I
with
think they
like
have an advantage over every other team to re-sign him. But when there's 29 other options, then kick out the ones that obviously aren't an option. But say it's 9 or 10 to 1, that the field kind of gets it's
there's
it's the
no
right
one
right guess.
they can still re-sign him.
Exactly.
It's exactly what happened with Flaherty.
Yeah.
Right? They traded
But
Flaherty to the Dodgers and then they re-signed him.
there there is nothing they can get for Tariq Skubal that makes them a better team than they are with Tariq Skubal, and they're in this race. So that's
Sure.
why I think he
That's
stays on the team.
fair enough. Fair enough. They are 3.5 games back from the last wild card spot. They've got four teams ahead of them, five teams if you include Cleveland, who has the final spot right now. So again, they're not far out of it. They just have a lot of teams that they need to that also need to falter in order for them to jump up. All right. Well, lots of news to consider. And as I talked about, lots of news coming in still as games finish up here on Saturday evening. But we got to get into some actual recommendations as we find ways to spend our the last remaining fab dollars with, just a few, about 2 months left worth of fab to spend it on. So we are going to get to all that right after this break. All right, Kevin, we've got power. Let's get right into the hitting categories as we contemplate how we're going to make up ground in the power categories. Of course, we're talking home runs, RBI. Who is on your list? I love this first name because talked about him
Adam,
last week.
we talked about him last week, right? And exactly what we talked about, Christian Encarnacion Strand, right? We talked about we don't know what the playing time is going to be.
Sure.
And what do they do for the weekend after they call him up? He gets one start out of 3 games. He's off our radar.
Yep.
We can't use him. He's not going to play. And he played every single game this week and hit 3 home runs. There are so many ways that this is a big trap. Like, that was probably the best week we see out of him the rest of the season, but we have to be interested. And so far, so good. And it appears he's going to get these plate appearances. However, with a guy like CES, it could go away as quickly as it arrived without us hearing a thing about it. He could just all of a sudden not be in the lineup at all next week. So there is some risk there. But I think with what we saw out of him this week, we have to be interested. And he's only 3% rostered in 15s because he only played 1 out of 3 games last weekend.
Right.
So he's going to be picked up everywhere. Maybe one of the more expensive guys this week with teams that need power out there. Somebody that won't be that expensive, but is only going to be playable for the first half of the week in FBC and those types of formats. Nelson Velasquez, the St. Louis Cardinals face 3 lefty starters in the first half of the week, so he's played. Even though that he had a stretch a couple of weeks ago when the Cardinals had their 8-game week where they were facing lefties in the first half of the week as well, and he only went 2 for 10. But one of the 2 was a home run, the other a double. He had like 4 RBI. It worked out. We don't expect a great batting average from Nelson Velasquez, in spite of the fact he's hitting about 300. We don't expect that out of him. We want the power. So the first half of this week, I love him. And then in 12s and the 10% of 15s where he's available, Ty France is having the best season of his career, and it has been prolonged over the past 2 months. Since the end of May, he is one of the best power hitters in baseball, and he's still available in 82% of 12-team leagues.
Nice. The name that stands out to me in a very similar fashion to CES is Tommy White for the Athletics. We didn't mention this. Nick Kurtz did come back from the IL for the Athletics. In return, the Athletics Max Muncy was sent down to make room. Um, Tommy White has been playing he started every single game except for one since being called up last week at the end of last week. And he's performing quite well. PL Bot likes him for as a power option. He could have very well just fit into the opportunity section as well. 40% roster in 15 teamers, 0% roster in 12s. I don't know that you need to get him in 12s at this time unless you're really desperate for that position or for that stat line. But it is nice that he's got the 7 games. He's got the added benefit of playing most of his games in West Sacramento for the remainder of the season as well. So Tommy White, if he wasn't on your radar last week, at least throw him in there for this week, according to PL Bot. Peelbot also likes your Nick Lofton shout out as well, just for whatever it's worth, with the added playing time probably factoring in, or the
Mhm.
possible added playing time with Bobby Witt on the shelf also moving forward. Um, I don't know if you want to give any credence to that at all, but he's in the top 3 as far as projected RBI for players that are rostered in less than 50% of main event leagues.
Yeah, Nick Lofton, as in my opinion, underperformed the first couple of years of his major league career. I really liked him coming up. I really liked him when he was drafted out of Baylor. Uh, all round, he can do a little bit in all categories, but he's not spectacular in anything. So, especially in 15-team leagues, if you have a hole at middle or corner infield, that's the other great thing. He can play corner or middle. In deep leagues, that could be pretty valuable this time of year where he's just gonna uh just kind of chip away at your counting stats
Mhm.
and keep getting a couple each week for you in those runs and RBI categories. Can hit a home run, can steal a base with a decent batting average. So in 15s, he's a nice bench player to have for when you need him.
Sure. All right. Well, we got a couple of little power options out there. Some big ones, of course, Christian and Carcino Strand also at the top of the home run projected list for PL Bot. So throw him up there, give him an extra point on the consideration scale. But for speed, Kevin, we need some stolen bases. We need some runs. This is still the stolen base category is still the offensive category that I have the most focused on through the rest of the year, where I can make up the most ground, I think. So I love the first name because I happened to be watching the game last night. Saw the 4 for 4 performance. He looked a little emotional. Like it was obviously his best game coming up. And I'm holding the reveal for the name until you start talking. But I was happy to see the name on here.
Well, some people probably know already with you being a Red Sox fan, and we talk about him almost every week. Anthony Siegler, leading off for your Boston Red Sox nearly every day. And I still think he's going to steal more bags. He only has 2 so far, and he has stolen more bases in the minors in the past now, not since he came over to the Red Sox organization. I think his high for a season is like 6 when he had double digit stolen bases in the minors for 2 other teams. But so that's part of it. But I still think he's more than a he'll steal a handful of bags the rest of the way. But the runs will be there leading off for a red hot Boston Red Sox team, as we've said multiple times already this show. And they may have well, they definitely have one of the best schedules for this coming week. The only thing that detracts from it is they'll have to face Yamamoto over the weekend. But they get 4 games in West Sacramento and 3 games at the Los Angeles Dodgers this week. So we might get a home run or 2 out of Anthony Siegler as well. And I expect him in West Sacramento where he should be getting on base at a very high percentage or a very high rate. I expect to get that we get a stolen base or two, and definitely some runs out of Anthony Siegler this week. My other guy we already talked about, David Hamilton. A little bit of a playing time concern, but that 2 out of 3 games is enough with his stolen base prowess.
Mhm. The name that stands up for me from PLBot, 13% rostered in the main event, 0% in the 12 teamers. Jim Jarvis of Atlanta is playing a little bit more than a strong side platoon in the outfield for Atlanta. And of course, in the minors, he had 32 stolen bases this year in AAA, 14 across 2 levels, 3 levels, or 2 teams playing for Detroit's farm system and Atlanta's throughout the last year as well. So he's got some history of speed in there. Has not stolen a base yet at the major league level, but with the added playing time and being on that opportunity, the opportunity Atlanta might be giving him as he moves forward throughout the course of the week could be a good one. He's a PL Bot has him at a 70% chance of getting a stolen base at some point throughout the course of the week. So I like him better than the names above him. They Victor Robles, Dane Myers, Leody Taveras, and Taylor Walls have a higher projected stolen base total by PL Bot, but I just think Jarvis has more clear runway for playing time with that percentage.
Unfortunately, Adam, he might not play. When Acuna comes back,
That's right.
Dubon Dubon needs a Dubon's not getting kicked out of that lineup after what
No,
he's done this
sure.
season. And last week we talked about it. We thought either it could be Dubon could take Hicklin's spot, but they got Yastrzemski back this week. So versus righties, Hicklin already lost his spot. Jarvis is the only place that Dubon has left to play now when
Fair.
Acuna comes back, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I like Tavares with Baltimore having those 3 games versus lefties this week.
Yeah, he has been getting the majority of starts in center field as well. So Tavares, yeah, nice. Think good correction there.
I forgot all about Acuna till yesterday, or I'd have said the same thing, Adam.
Yeah, I remember seeing the headline too that he was supposed to. He's scheduled to start. I think Gwinnett has a doubleheader tomorrow on Sunday, and
Yep,
he's
and they
expected
said
to
he
play
might even
both.
play both since they're only 7-inning games.
Yeah,
Yeah. If he plays both those, I expect him back for the first game this week if he
yeah.
plays 2 on Sunday. Yeah.
All right. Well, we gotta move into somebody who has a better opportunity than Jim Jarvis does going into next week. And some notes to
I
keep
put
in.
a lot of notes here, Adam. Obviously, you don't have to read all of the teams, but it's the main point I'm trying to make here with these schedule notes is it's going to be really difficult to play a platoon player in the first half of the week that you only think is going to play 2 games because we have 15 teams playing 7 games, and there's going to be enough guys um, that qualify at the positions that are going to get 4 games in the first half that two's just not going to cut it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna save my breath here and not list off every single one. I think you just kind of nailed it there. It's
Yeah.
just you got to keep track. If that's the way you're playing your game, obviously you need to be able to keep track of how many starts you're actually going to get out of everybody on your roster, and if you're willing to take that hit of losing a game based on matchups for the sake of getting the extra 2 or 3 games in the first half of the week, especially on the hitter side. It's just the decision you have to make. But there are a ton of teams that do have a full 7 game work week. I will list off those teams just for the sake of doing it, and I always do it, including my Boston Red Sox, the Yankees, the White Sox, the Athletics, Seattle, Texas, Atlanta, Miami, Mets, Washington, Cubs, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and San Francisco all play 7 games. There is a lone team that Major League Baseball did dirty and gave a 5 game work week to the Colorado Rockies. So they'll be getting those 2 off days next week. They will be playing the Rockies, that is, they will be playing 2 of those games on the road in San Diego, and then they will host your Royals for 3 over the weekend. Cincinnati will be hosting all week in Great American Small Park. They'll be hosting Cleveland for 3 and Pittsburgh for 4, and the Athletics will also be hosting all week this time, of course, in West Sacramento against my Red Sox and the Detroit Tigers over the weekend, for 7 total games in West Sacramento, which is, just nice to target, at least on the hitting
Yeah,
side.
7 games in Great American Small Park and 7 games in West Sacramento, is amazing, and the collaboration podcast with, Vlad for FTN a couple of weeks ago, he talked about how he gives each hitting lineup a score, um,
Sure.
and that, from 0 to 10, there's never been a 10, but there's a couple of 8s this week, and they're teams that are visiting for 4 games to those ballparks. Pittsburgh and your Boston Red Sox, very highly ranked for favorable lineups this week. Um, because their other series are decent as well as getting to go to 4 games to those venues.
Yeah. Um, your the PL bot projections, the PL projections sheet has a very similar kind of. They don't do 1 through 10. It's more of like a WRC plus type of scale at 100. Anything over 100 is good. But they'll give a score to the pitchers that the hitters have to face, and in
Mhm.
addition,
Yeah.
the run factor and the park factor, like how likely they are to score a run or score runs, how likely they are to hit off their set of pitchers. Your Royals have a pretty good set of matchups in general. I'm seeing that's the highest score that I'm seeing.
Multiple sites, they're the highest ranked team with only 6 games. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, Next, right after that, looks like San Diego and Pittsburgh are they have a very pitcher friendly matchups for at least scheduled for the upcoming week. But with all that in mind, Kevin, and anything else, who's got a good opportunity ahead of themselves that you want to target for this week or beyond?
I forget who I put down here. This is all kinds of opportunities here. There is a question though. Pittsburgh, who we mentioned, has a very favorable schedule this week. We should see Spencer Horwitz back. He is still 70% rostered in 15s, only 16% in 12s. And my big question though, he'd been leading off versus both righties and lefties for a long time before he hit the IL. When he first hit the IL, Connor Griffin took over that leadoff spot. But since Connor Griffin has been out, now it has been Jake Mangum, and he's performed very well. And we know about his speed and his stolen base um, opportunities, and he likes to take those opportunities. So I'm not so certain we're going to see Horwitz get his leadoff spot back. Prior to that, we saw him hitting cleanup for this team. He's not taking that from Valdez right now, I don't think. So I'm really curious to see where they put Horwitz, but I do believe he's going to be back in the lineup every day.
hmm Yeah, for all the things I just mentioned as well, I'm looking down the availability list for the Padres, for Pittsburgh. Uh, wondering how many at bats Jake Cronenworth's going to get. Song is looked really nice for the Padres in recent days as well. It's just a matter of whether or not they're all going to get everyday playing time there, even with the positive matchups that they might have, at least on the pitching side moving forward. Um, all right. Well, that's enough hitting for now. Let's get into our pitching categories, Kevin, and we're going to do that right after this break. All right, Kevin, we need to volume our way up the statistical ladder, if you will. We need wins, we need strikeouts. Two start pitchers are hard to come by, and lots of things could change, obviously, leading up into the trade deadline. But who might you be targeting for at least this week, if not in the future weeks, for those volume categories of wins and strikeouts?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys with very little availability, but it's we have to check these names, right? We're gonna see um, guys like Tyler Mahle gets a two-step at home. versus a tough Milwaukee lineup, but at home, we love that ballpark for pitching. And then at San Diego, who we talk about having a nice schedule for this week that includes the home game there versus Tyler Mahle, but there could be something there. JP Sears for San Diego has the Giants coming to town. JP Sears, a guy that I've brought up many times, especially last season, just never quite put it together. But that San Francisco lineup that's really up and down, they go on really hot streaks for a period and then do nothing for a period. I could see JP Sears having a nice outing there. It's too bad after what we saw out of Sugano yesterday that he is at home this week because that was a really nice outing for him. My one of my biggest targets for this week, and I do not like the fact that both games are at Great American Small Park, but that usually doesn't affect the lefty Brady Singer or right-hander Brady Singer very often. Excuse me. He gets Cleveland. I love that matchup, even at Great American Small Park, but that hot hitting Pittsburgh team coming to town, that's the one that worries me, but I can accept that. I like Colin Ray if he's available for his St. Louis start, even though he will have to face the Yankees in what could be a very hitter-friendly Wrigley Field over the weekend. For the same two matchups, I just can't do David Peterson anymore. I've eaten all those runs he's given up in a couple of those starts recently, and so I cannot do it anymore. There was one other guy up here towards the top in the American League that had some availability. Max Fried wasn't dropped anywhere. We're getting him back. You can check in some leagues, but in NFBC, he's still 100% rostered. Who was? Oh. Nope, he wasn't up here in the American League. So Andrew Alvarez has been pitching pretty well this season. The problem has been he hasn't went 5 innings.
Mhm.
So maybe this is more of a ratios play in spite of the fact that he's given up runs over his past 2 or 3 outings. But for 10 out of the 11 outings prior to that, all 3 to 4 inning outings, he was giving up 2 runs or less. 48 strikeouts in 41 innings over that period of time. So Andrew Alvarez, I don't think we're getting wins out of him. So maybe I shouldn't talk about him until ratios, but he has been a ratio liability in a couple of his most recent appearances. But for the amount of innings he is pitching, he's getting a lot of strikeouts. And with a two-step, even against Toronto and going to Atlanta, if he can get up to 8 or 9 innings between the 2 starts, the strikeouts will be there.
There's a couple of guys that I'm just interested to see what happens tomorrow on Sunday.
Yes.
That I'm not interested
Several guys.
in for
Yes.
this coming week, but if they do well enough on this Sunday, it has to make me think about them for the future. Carson Weisenhut is scheduled to start for the Giants on Sunday. Cole Drake starting for Arizona against Washington. And then for your Royals, I'm curious to know your thoughts on Luinder Avila, who looks like he's figuring out how to strike out more batters, even if it's at the cost of a little bit of a control. He's in Colorado for that
That's the problem.
weekend series. Again, no, I don't know that I'm interested in any one of these three guys for next week, but I've got to be paying attention to what they do this Sunday as I'm considering my bids, even for this week.
And in 15-team leagues, you need to pick them up this Sunday.
Exactly. No matter
Yep.
what they do.
Yep. Exactly. That's
um,
anybody that has availability, their matchups are horrendous,
yeah.
because they're getting picked up the week before.
Yep. Weisenhut, of course, going against the Angels now. He'll get the Padres over the weekend. As I mentioned, Cole Drake starting against for Arizona at Washington on Sunday. He'll get at Cleveland next weekend. So again, don't love any of that, but would like to see what all three of those guys do So whether or not they end up being stashes in the right circumstances this weekend, because as you mentioned, if you're considering them, everybody else is too, and somebody's
Yeah.
going to end up with them in their waterfall at the right spot, so they're going to end up rostering them.
Yeah, if you have a spot, go ahead and grab them.
All right. Well, at the grabbing those volume categories can typically hurt your ratios. So we're looking to still stabilize those ratios wherever we possibly can. ERA and WHIP, of course. Kevin, who's out there that you either want to add to your rotation of players that can come in and be that last man to kind of get those 3 appearances, those 3 to 4 innings, and hopefully not give up any runs or hits or walks.
Yeah, it seems like there's always somebody in Atlanta's bullpen that can help us out with this. Dylan Dodd just has been, you know, I see a projection for a 2.5 ERA, under a 1 WHIP for the week, and those 3 appearances that you're talking about, a few strikeouts. Atlanta, of course, these guys in their bullpen could always stumble into a win or a save. Probably not the save, but yeah, Dylan Dodd has been really good recently. Add him to the list. I still haven't, Adam. I know it's the next category, and you may have someone here, but I'm still waiting. I'm not ready to speculate on these saves this week. Uh, I think next week we'll still have one full day before the deadline. We'll have about 20 hours before the trade deadline when our running our FAAB next week, so we'll have a better idea, but there will still be some specs out there. I have never You ask me every season, I try to avoid it every season. I do finally give a couple of names, but it just seems to me like we're almost always wrong. Dennis Santana's going to come to mind, right? For 3 years we thought he was leaving Pittsburgh.
Well,
So,
he
um
he did leave Pittsburgh. He was DFA'd.
I, yes. Finally.
Just not the
So,
way we thought.
but yeah, Dylan Dodd. There's always somebody in Atlanta's bullpen that can help our ratios out.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, yeah, and then that's just good to just move right into that speculation category here. Of course we're talking
But
closers or closers to be or anybody who could walk their way into a save situation.
even if
Um,
you think you did the really good job and went out and got Whitlock a month and a half ago, that's probably no good now.
no,
And
absolutely.
that's what I did. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think I'm going to
I got
quit
Whitlock.
speculating.
I got Willox in a place or two. And
Yeah.
what's nice about knowing that now though is that I can drop Whitlock and feel okay
Yes.
and feel good about it, and I've got a roster spot, right, that I
Yes.
can use. It's the situations which are far and few between of being having a team that everything's kind of going the way you need it to go, and you can't speculate. Like you can't justify dropping a player who's obviously doing well for you right now. You anticipate them to continue to do well for you through August and into September on a speculation play that might happen. That's the one silver lining in those situations that you have. Um,
I got one that doesn't have anything to do with the trade. It's the Royals and the bullpen that has been an absolute mess. Carlos Estevez is throwing off a mound again. As bad as that bullpen has been, he's moving right back into the ninth inning when he comes back, even if he is still throwing 89-mile-an-hour fastballs.
hmm.
They don't have anybody else. So I think Estevez is going to get some saves down the stretch.
This is always the toughest thing to be like, all right, cool. I'm going to target the a player on a team that's not winning any games for saves, right? And it's like
And
the
is still on the IL, and we don't have a return date yet. Yeah.
So it's like the Angels bullpen is one that I hear a lot of people talking about. Ryan Zefferjan got the save last Sunday. They haven't
Hmm.
had a save since, but seems like that could be a name that they put into that situation whenever one does arrive for them in the hopefully near future for their sake. Um, but a situation that you're not speculating because of a trade. You're just speculating when the Angels finally get a save opportunity. Um, man, it's like Seattle's a tough one because as you already mentioned, I always mention, they've done it before. I'm not saying I've
Yeah.
seen any rumors of Andre Munoz going anywhere, but he could. And if they feel like it's going to be a move that's going to catapult them to the top of their division and or be more solidified in the wild card spot for the Mariners. Um, Pittsburgh did just DFA Dennis Santana, but um, yeah, the situations are still they're still hard to speculate because they're just all the teams that are obviously sellers don't have somebody obvious to sell,
Right.
as we might have seen in the past. Um, well, with that being said, any other reliever out there that you think could find themselves into safe situations, or we can go right into the wild card section, Kevin.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's do it. But we are going to take one last break. All right, wild card section starts to mean something different. It started to already make that transition, but we do see players getting called up after the trade deadline, and then obviously, of course, closer to the end of August, once they hit that mark where they're not going to get the minimum playing time to lose rookie eligibility. So there's still opportunity to stash prospects or players that in those leagues where you have the ability to do so. Um, and it could just be injury stashes. It could be obviously whatever you want, Kevin. Who's your wild card focus this week?
Well, there's a few of these guys that we briefly mentioned coming coming back. Like last week I mentioned Trevor Story, Ryan Helsley, actually a closer, but they're not available. Um, so there aren't a lot of those types of guys. So I'm still looking at some of the younger ones, but you know it's it's so hard this time of year because at this point, will they just wait another month, right? Before we see them, and then it won't count towards their time at all. So it's really tough this time of year. I do think that we are eventually you're the Red Sox fan and I bring them up more than you do. I do think we see Christian Campbell at some point, but probably not till September.
Mhm.
And I think that's the problem with some of the young guys that I do still expect to see. The biggest one that we already talked about several weeks ago is Joshua Baez in St. Louis. We actually may see him before September because he can help them down the stretch, I believe. So, but we've already talked about him. But he would be my biggest one that I would keep an eye on. Joshua Baez in St. Louis.
Yeah, St. Louis, one of those teams that is they're
Use
the
that
first
little
team out
boost.
right now in the wild
Yeah,
card. So uh
use that little boost.
they're the same
I
thing
think
as
he's
like
among the minor league leaders in home runs. He's got a nice batting average, stealing bases. He's looked really good.
St. Louis and the White Sox seem to be they're the AL NL teams that are like everybody was like, oh, we could stream against them, that'd be great, whatever. Ooh, look, all of a sudden they're winning games. And you almost don't want to stream against them at a bat like that for the Cardinals. And we got a stew going. Um, cool. Well,
And
lots to
Pedro
consider.
Ramirez is playing for the Chicago Cubs on almost an everyday basis versus righties. We're not seeing Michael Conforto out there anymore. We're seeing Pedro Ramirez is getting those starts. We talked about him really early in the season. He got called up, but he was the fourth outfielder, rarely saw him. And we see Craig Counsell when who did the Cubs just call up? They just called up Triantos, I believe. And Craig Counsell said, we don't have playing time for us, but he is the best option for that spot
Right.
that we have. We don't expect to see him on the field much, but he's our best option for this. Well, Pedro Ramirez is getting starts now, taking him away from Michael Conforto versus righties. So he's somebody to keep an eye on.
That's exactly what you had been calling for most of the season with Conforto. It's like,
They
this is
wait till 2/3 of it's over before they do it.
well, they're the Cubs are in a okay spot where they are in the standings. Obviously, they like to be leading their division, but being at the top of the wild card is not terrible. All right, well, Kevin, with all that and anything else, do you want to consider close us out here with any other closing comments or piece of advice that we can take into leading up to the MLB trade deadline?
Um, in in le in leagues where we have a good amount of fab left, and I'm not talking over half of what we started with, but it in many of my leagues, I still have 300-ish fab dollars, and that's more than most other people. But even if we can find find a target, and because we can lower our bids on everything else. There get a lot of people are really close to out of money. There's a lot of teams out there below in just out of triple digits in money left. So we can lower our bids, and that means if we do have a cushion and there's somebody we do really like, that can help our team. And just because a guy is good doesn't mean he's an upgrade for your team, depending on how you drafted and what else you've done so far this season. But make that move. I think we're at that point where those of us that budget our fab for this reason, we can take advantage of it now. Go
Yeah, and I
get
mean, you can use your fab
go
for
get
defensive reasons.
go get Pedro Ramirez if he's available. Spend an extra, and he's not going to be expensive. But in a lot of leagues, he'll probably go for $7 or $8. Go out, spend $22 to know you get him, because our other bids don't have to be more than $3 or $4 for our fill-ins these days.
Yeah, and if you have again, in the few circumstances where you might have if you have the flexibility of stashing players that you don't need, but your opponents do need,
It's time.
and you happen to also have the fab dollars to spend, go do that.
It's also
Look for the
time to
team that just lost to Salo.
evaluate your risk tolerance. The further back you are, the riskier you have to be now. This is a Ariel Cohen thing, right? That the amount of risk you take is 100 based on where you're at right now with these few weeks to go.
Fair. Yes, yes, absolutely.
It's time to start taking some chances, and in leagues where you're at the top or even near it, but everything's close, you probably want to play it a little safer.
Yeah, and that goes for each category as well, not just like the
Exactly.
overall
Not
standings of
just
your league.
overall.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I'll take more risk in the stolen base categories when I'm at the bottom, but I see that there's only like 5 stolen bases between where I am and the team that's 7 spots above me. If there's like a big clunk where it's like I can jump up 7 spots with an added, couple of stolen bases in a week or 2-week period, that might be a risk that I'm willing to take and leave some power on my bench for 2 weeks in order to jump up more spaces. I'm in at least one league where I've got a 6 or 7 home run cushion at the top of that category, right?
Mhm.
But I'm in the exact same situation I just described, where I'm near the bottom in stolen bases, but the teams right above me aren't that far away. So it's like I could gain a lot more ground by focusing on that category at the behest of losing my pillow in home runs. And I might not lose. Maybe if I jump down one spot in home runs, even if that happens, I can jump up, 6 or 7 spots in stolen bases. The net worth obviously is worth it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for episode 263 of On the Wire. After all that, I am Adam Howe. And on behalf of Kevin Hastings, thanks for listening. And we bid you goodbye.